Hello everybody, this is Michael with the Shutterview, and today we're going to be talking about layer masks in Photoshop. So this is going to be a very quick and basic video on how to use layer masks, but first I'm going to talk about what are layer masks and why they're beneficial over something like destructive editing. So before we get started on layer masks, I'm going to talk about destructive editing. Destructive editing is when you're pulling information from your Photoshop document or deleting it and it cannot be returned. So in this case, I have a photo here of a person, and then I have text above their head. And a lot of times when I'm doing movie posters, album covers, any kind of advertising, there's a person in there. Sometimes I like to put the title or the whatever text behind the person's head, or give the illusion that the text is behind the person's head. So a lot of people, when they think this and they're like, well, I need to do this in this instance, one way they will do it is they will go to the text layer, they will grab the eraser tool, they will zoom in, and then you can see a little tiny circle with a line on my cursor pops up. So this is because when I click on it, it's going to say the type layer must be rasterized before proceeding. The text will never be editable, will no longer be editable. So rasterizing, in order to use the eraser tool in what we're about to do, which is destructive editing, you have to rasterize text, which is always a thing I do not like to do. I always like to keep my text non-rasterized in all situations just so I can resize it later. But again, that goes back to the bad things about destructive editing. So destructive editing, I have the eraser tool here, and I start erasing here, and I want to erase this so it gives this illusion that, you know, this is behind the girl's head. And as you can tell, we can zoom in a little bit more, you know, when it comes to doing this, unless you've got a very skilled hand, it's definitely not the best way to do it, because as you can see, I'm still seeing small gaps here. Right here we have a small gap, but let's say you're doing this and then maybe you erase too much, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, I did that wrong. So Control Z, going back again, and you're gonna keep going back and forth. Control Z, trying to fix this. Again, this is one of the negatives of destructive editing, because you're deleting the information and you cannot get it back. That's why I generally tell people, don't do destructive editing. Does it look decent? Yes, but the bad thing is you have all this information lost right here and you can't bring it back. This is where layer masks come in. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit Control Z. We're gonna undo all that erasing that we did with the eraser tool. We're gonna de-rasterize the layer and make it a text layer again. So what a layer mask is exactly what it says it does. It's a mask. It's going to conceal. It's going to conceal information that's still going to be there, but it will just be kind of masked and hidden away, kind of like an illusion. And that's one of the reasons why I love Photoshop, is a lot of it's going to be like a digital illusion. So if you go here to the bottom, you'll see like a little square. You'll see the FX panel, and right next to it, there's a little square with a circle in it. If you hover over it, it'll say layer mask. Go ahead and click that, and then you'll see right here a little white box appears next on our text layer. And the great thing is our text layer is still a text layer. So that means I can resize it, I can edit it, I can change it. Again, another benefit of using a layer mask rather than rasterizing and just using the eraser tool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure the layer mask is selected. There's a little white outline around it right there. And then what you're going to do, instead of using the eraser tool, we're going to use the paintbrush. And I know you're going to think like, a paintbrush? I don't know where you're going. We're not trying to paint something, but we are, because you'll notice that the layer mask is a white square. It's the whole canvas is white. So that's kind of like a symbolization of like, hey, right now we're showing everything. And the thing you have to remember with layer mask is something I want you to repeat to yourself. I want you to write in a little notepad somewhere, and just remember, white reveals, black conceals. So instead of using the eraser tool, again, remembering white reveals, black conceals, we're going to use a black paintbrush. And we're going to make sure the layer mask is selected. And we're going to go in here and we're going to start painting in on that white square, because right now we have the layer mask selected. We're painting on the layer mask itself, and we're doing nothing to the actual original layer. We're not just doing any destructive editing to it. We're not removing from it. We're not doing anything, because I'm going to show you right now as we erase this. We're going to go in here, And you can see it's not very perfect. So if we go in there, and then you'll see like there's a little tiny spot right there, but now I don't have to hit Control Z. Now I can just go to the white paintbrush and I can begin painting in the white to reveal our information. So there's a little bit there, reveal. So now I can go in here and begin revealing. In fact, if I want to reveal all of it, I can just start painting it back in and see the information is retained. That's the cool thing about using a layer mask over something like an eraser tool or just deleting something, that white reveals, black conceals. So as you can see, now we have the style we were going for, but let's say down the line, my editor comes to me and says, or my director, not editor, and says like, well, I don't like this. I want it to be returned, you know, like that client saw it, he didn't like it, he wants us to put Photoshop back on there. So instead of like where I'm like, oh, I erased it, now I have to retype Photoshop out and kind of like line it up again, I can literally go to this layer mask, I can right click on it, and I can disable it. And there you go. So look, disable, enable. So the information is still there, it's just with the illusion of a layer mask, we're hiding the information. And that's one of the in fact, that is the biggest benefit of using a layer mask over something like destructive editing. And guys, I highly recommend using layer masks. They will save you so much time. It'll be more streamlined for you. It'll be easier to use. And I know it takes a little bit of a learning experience, but just remember the big thing, the number one thing I want you to remember is white reveals, black conceals. And I was taught that 12 years ago when I went to college, and I still remember to this day when I do layer mask is white reveals, black conceals. And again, what that means is when you have the layer mask selected, and let's say we go to black, now I can start concealing the information. Then watch, if you go over here, I'm going to disable the layer mask, and there you go. So this is one of the big benefits of using layer mask, guys, and I hope this video was very helpful to you in your process of using layer mask. I know it's a very basic video, but this is kind of an example that I would use whenever I use layer mask. Now I know there's other ways to have text to disappear behind someone's head like this, but for me personally, I think layer mask is a great way to do it, and there are other ways to do it as well. I mean, you could what I could do oppositely is layer mask, copy the background, the picture of the girl. I could layer mask the background out of her, which Photoshop can do now with AI, which is really cool. And I could just, for example, in fact, let's just do it real quick. So we're going to duplicate this layer. We're going to disable this layer mask. So what I'm going to do now is Photoshop has a nifty little thing right here at the bottom called remove background. So if you click on this, it will do exactly what it did. See how it created a layer mask right there? Because Photoshop is all about layer masks. So now you can see the white, all the black, and the background of her is black now because it's removed it. And I know you can't tell because I have this bottom layer still lit up. So there you go. So another great way to do this would be, instead of actually layer masking the text, which works great as well, is you can bring her up above the text. Now she's behind it, and then we can bring in back the original image, and now you can see that she looks like she's standing in front of the text. Now both options work great. I use the first option just to show you guys like a kind of a quick way of what layer masks do, but as you can see, Photoshop's AI also utilizes layer masks, so that's another thing to remember as well. This is why learning layer masks is so important. And I want to thank you guys so much for being in this video with me, and well, not being in it with me, but watching this video for me. I hope it was very helpful. If you want to learn more about layer masks, I will be releasing more videos on other things you can do with layer masks. I know I gave you a little teaser at the end on like other things you can do with it, but layer masks are very important in Photoshop, and we'll discuss it further later. Thank you so much for watching, guys. This is Michael with the Shutterview, and have a wonderful day.